Hello and welcome to MediaNama. In April of this year, the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, or MeitY, released a business requirement document outlining a consent management system under the Digital Personal Data Protection Act. This system provides a structured way for data principals or individuals to make decisions regarding the collection and processing of their personal data. The CMS allows them to easily grant consent, modify consent, withdraw it, and track how their data is being used, all through a single centralized platform. Such consent management systems will be an important part of India's broader efforts to ensure data privacy and transparency in the digital space. By creating a standard platform for managing consent for businesses that process personal data, the CMS ensures compliance with the DPDP Act by making it clear that consent must be obtained for each specific use case. The core principle behind the CMS is that consent for data processing must be explicit, informed, and granular. This means that users must have a clear understanding of what data is being collected, how it will be used, and for how long. The system also ensures that consent cannot be inferred or implied. It must be given through affirmative action. This eliminates the problem of pre-checked boxes or vague agreements that users unknowingly accept when signing up for services. Once a user provides consent, the CMS generates a consent artifact. This is a digital record that contains essential information about the consent, including the timestamp, purpose, and the method of consent. This ensures that both users and businesses have a verifiable, auditable record of what was agreed to. The CMS stores this consent artifact securely and allows businesses to easily check whether they have the necessary consent before processing any personal data. The CMS provides a range of functions as well, including the ability for users to update, renew, or withdraw their consent at any time. This flexibility ensures that consent is not a one-time event but an ongoing process. Users may decide to modify their preferences, such as consenting to a new purpose for their data or withdrawing consent altogether. If consent is withdrawn, the CMS immediately notifies all data fiduciaries and processors, ensuring that any data processing linked to that event is stopped. Additionally, the CMS ensures real-time synchronization across all systems. This means that once consent is granted or updated, all the relevant parties, including third-party processors, are immediately informed. Now, let's break down how the CMS works in practice. When a user initiates a service request, such as registering for an account or purchasing a product, the CMS will trigger a consent request. This request will clearly state the specific purposes for which personal data will be collected, how it will be collected, and how long it will be stored. It is important that the consent notice is clear and plain. Users should be able to easily understand what they are agreeing to. The system offers granular consent options so that users can approve or decline consent for each individual purpose separately. For example, a user might consent to sharing their email address for account creation but decline consent for marketing purposes. Once consent is granted, the CMS generates the consent artifact, which serves as an official record of the user's consent. This artifact is stored in a secure database and includes important metadata such as the user ID, session ID, and timestamp. The system synchronizes this consent status across the various internal systems of the business and any third-party data processes involved. This ensures that before any data is processed, businesses can check whether they have the necessary consent. The system also ensures that users are reminded when their consent is about to expire. The CMS will send renewal reminders to the user, but it's important to note that renewal is not automatic. The user must actively agree to continue with the data processing. This ensures that users are regularly reminded about how their data is being used, and they have the option to opt out if they no longer wish to grant consent. The CMS also includes a feature for consent withdrawal. If a user decides they no longer want their data processed, they can withdraw consent at any time. Once consent is withdrawn, the CMS will immediately notify all relevant parties to halt any related data processing. This system also records the withdrawal in the audit trail, which is crucial for legal and regulatory purposes. If a user withdraws consent for certain purposes, businesses must stop processing data related to those purposes. The CMS is also designed to help businesses comply with the DPDP Act's requirements for data processing. Data fiduciaries must ensure that they have explicit consent for every data processing activity, and the CMS helps to validate this consent at every stage. Whenever a business initiates a data processing activity, whether that is marketing, analytics, or the delivery of their service, the CMS will check whether the appropriate consent is in place. If the consent is not valid, the business will be denied access to process that data. However, there are some important challenges associated with the CMS that need to be addressed. First, there is the issue of parental consent for minors. The DPDP Act requires that businesses obtain consent from a legal guardian before processing the personal data of children or people with disabilities. But as it stands, the CMS does not provide a clear mechanism for linking parents to their children, which could allow minors to circumvent the system by appointing another adult, such as an older sibling, as their guardian. This could pose a serious challenge to the effective implementation of the CMS. Siddharth Dev, Associate Director of Public Policy at the Quantum Hub, told MediaNama that absolute compliance with the Act in this case may not even be possible. Instead, businesses should work towards ensuring reasonable compliance with the law. Another issue is consent fatigue. Users are often overwhelmed by constant consent requests, leading them to simply accept everything without fully understanding what they're agreeing to. Experts have suggested that the clarity and simplicity of consent notices can help reduce this issue. Clear, plain language, along with a one-stop platform where users can easily manage and track their consent preferences, would alleviate the burden of constantly dealing with consent requests. The complexity of the system itself could also be a concern for businesses. The CMS requires that all actions related to consent be logged in real time, which could create a compliance burden for some businesses, especially smaller startups with limited resources. While the DPDP Act offers flexibility to businesses, it's important that the system is not overly burdensome or difficult to implement. Another question to ask would be, what happens when users forget to renew consent and therefore lose access to essential services? Here, Siddharth Dev argued that businesses typically provide periodic reminders well in advance of consent renewal deadlines. He added that in this case, the incentives for service continuity between principals and data fiduciaries are actually well aligned with each other. He suggested that the law should focus on ensuring data processing and consent aligned with the principles of purpose limitation and data protection, and allow businesses and users to adapt naturally. In addition, Pranav Narayana, who is the legal counsel for Sahamati, emphasized the importance of sector-specific data retention regulations, citing the IRDAI and the RBI, which require businesses to store critical customer data for set periods of time. This could prevent service disruptions from expired consent. He further added that fiduciaries should remind customers to renew consent on time. Nikhil Janji, who is the senior product manager at IDFI, proposed that fiduciaries would send consent renewal notices every time customers interacted with their services, either in person or through digital platforms. Now, while the business requirement document does not present a binding or a mandatory example of a consent management system, it could provide a glimpse into how the government is looking at consent management and compliance for businesses under the Digital Personal Data Protection Act. Thank you for watching. For more tech policy videos, please subscribe to MediaNama.